You are listening to Twisted Morals Chapter 13, written and created by Jasper BlackLace, audio by Kawushi. Sage's POV. I took first watch that night as the three others cuddled together behind the cash counter, snoring softly. Thankfully, the infected around this location were sparse, and all of them so far had zero sight. I spent most of my time stargazing and thinking about my ex. We thought of each other as the endgame, or at least I did. We were the classic cliché known as the high school sweethearts. We met when we were 10 and became fast friends. We just started dating, more out of pressure from our friends, but it ended up being the best decision I ever made. But clearly, she didn't agree, considering her betrayal. Sage? I heard a slight shifting from behind me as Clem gently put Michael down onto the ground and shifted her body away from Nick. Morning, sleepyhead. I respond with a husky voice. Morning. It's time to rest. We have a long trek ahead of us today. She scratched the back of her neck before lifting her hair upward for a brief moment before she let it fall past her shoulders. Will do. Normally, I would have told her to get more sleep, considering she usually did most of the overnight watches. But I was exhausted. Between my mental battle with my depression and my physical exhaustion over the past 2 days, I was totaled. I walked over towards the boys where Michael had somehow ended up with his head towards Nick's feet. I chuckled softly at the sight before I laid down next to him. I fell asleep quite quickly, and thankfully, my dreams were filled with nothing that I could remember. Soon enough, the sunlight awoke me, along with Clem's less than graceful movements through the store. Michael had somehow ended up on top of my legs, wrapped around them like pandas did bamboo. Nick was awake and following Clem around peacefully, holding whatever she must have handed to him. What do you suppose I do about this one? I say, pointing to my shins that had become the perfect source of comfort. Clem dropped what she had found and looked over to me. Surprised, but then chuckled. You might be stuck there a while, it seems. She looked to Nick, who placed the items he held down by my feet before lifting his brother into his arms. Sorry about that. He's a bit clingy. A bit might be an understatement there, kiddo. I stood patting the boy on the head before walking over to Clem. Did we find the stuff you were hoping for? We found mostly everything. I just wish I had found a bit more water. We only have 10 bottles, and with the kids, we're gonna need more. We might be able to add a few house raids on the way. Would that work? I mean, we could, but there's no guarantee they'd be empty or have any kind of water available. We might not have a choice, Clementine. We need supplies. And frankly, I don't plan on winging it in this situation. She shook her head at me with a smile. I'm not saying we can't try, silly. We just have to be careful. There are a few small housing quarters within an hour or so from here by car. It will take us much longer, but we can camp out there too. She put the last of the snack bars and canned food into her bag before pointing to mine and gesturing to what Nick had placed on the ground before. So, shall we get strapped in? I asked as I walked away from Clem to bag the items and ready myself to tie Nick to my back. Yeah, Nick, bring your brother over here so I can fasten him to me. Hopefully he can get a bit more sleep. We have a long day ahead. Nick walked his brother over, holding him to her chest, while I tied the blanket, securing it to her back and her waist. She helped me do the same with Nick before we both grabbed our bikes and unblocked the back exit door. The front of the store, over 2 hours, had become more packed with the infected, so moving anything that close would disturb them and catch their attention. Even the deaf ones were close enough to feel the vibrations. We moved the freezer we pushed in front of the door as slowly as possible to avoid too much movement, which could draw attention. A few of the infected were the ones with sight. We could tell by the way they glanced around rather than running into things. It could move around without any mistakes, which was unlike the ones who did. We pushed the door open, walking out the back entrance. There were 2 of them standing 10 feet right in front of us, but thankfully they couldn't see us. We closed the door softly before I helped Clem onto her bike without waking Michael, and I followed suit. She used her fingers, counting down from 10 before she and I pedaled down a steep hill away from the infected that chased us. I felt Nick grab my clothes tighter as we got further and further away from the creatures that followed. You have completed Twisted Morals, Chapter 13, story written and created by Jasper BlackLace, audio by Kawushi. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.